All right, we will get started. Welcome back, everybody. We will get going with our August 3rd Board of Education meeting. Alan, Todd, and Grace Lee are not here due to unforeseen circumstances. So we will go ahead, if you'll rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, has everyone had a chance to review the agenda? And if so, I will take a motion to approve the agenda.
First, can I make a motion to amend the agenda to move subject item 5.11 to 4.04?
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, so now I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Anyone opposed? All right. We don't believe there were any written comments, so we will move on to our first early opportunity for public comments. And we had 4 people who signed up to make a public comment. So we will get started with the first person, Danielle Peterson. Come on up.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Danielle Peterson, and my oldest son will be a kindergartner at Bristol this year. I'm a teacher, and I taught 3rd grade and TESOL in Connecticut. I was recently prompted to familiarize myself with the handbook in preparation for the new school year, and was alarmed to see that the literacy curriculum included comprehensive balanced literacy and reading recovery as 2 of its main components. I'm familiar with both from my teacher training and my instructional practices. But during the past year, I've been faced with new information, as a majority of elementary educators have, that these programs were not based in scientifically rigorous data, and that literacy programs must shift towards more explicit phonics instruction for emerging and beginning readers in order to reverse the loss of literacy in our public schools. Reading recovery and other guided reading curricula have been exposed as programs that advance children's reading level, sometimes without translating to decoding skills outside the context of leveled readers. Comprehensive balanced literacy programs, including Lucy Calkins' units of study in reading, have many components, including a lot of time for independent reading, and so are allotted a large portion of the instructional day in elementary school. I know several parents within the district whose young children have struggled with reading in Webster schools and needed to seek out other forms of intervention to address the issue. But when I've discussed it with them, it seems that children receiving intervention within Webster walls are still using reading recovery based on a cueing system which seems has been debunked, and no one seems to know about plans for change in our district. Meanwhile, neighboring areas such as the Parkway School District are piloting new programs this school year. As an educator, I understand that the smallest changes in curriculum are costly, time-consuming, and put a lot of stress on faculty. But I also know that without support from the community and an empowered team, change is impossible. My family and I want to urge the district to be transparent about our plan to rectify this issue, begin conversation about costs and timelines for changes to take place, and guarantee that even if a curricular overhaul is years away, that we will see an immediate change for students who are learning to read this year and who've been struggling to read until now. Can schedules shift toward more time for direct phonics instruction? Can mini lessons based on cueing strategies be replaced? Can independent reading and small group time in early grades shift back towards direct instruction? And what can we do to help as parents and families? Does the district need funding, more PD time for teachers, volunteers? Please tell us. Please let us be your team.
Thank you. And because I'm out of practice and I forgot to read it, I'm going to read now our statement about public comments. We welcome questions, ideas, and comments from everyone in attendance. Members of the audience may comment during the public comment portion of the meeting. We ask comments be limited to 3 minutes in order to complete the agenda, and we also ask that comments begin by providing your name, address, and the school district in which you reside. And starting with this board meeting, commenters will have needed to sign up prior to the start of the meeting, and will be called on in the order that they were signed up. So I apologize for missing that. And now we are on to Meredith Langlitz.
Hi, my name is Meredith Langlitz, and I too have a rising kindergartner. When my daughter approached me a year ago and announced she wanted to learn to read, I tried to sidestep the whole issue. I love reading, but I'm not an educator, and I had no idea how to teach someone to read. Feeling unprepared, I tried to put off my 4-year-old's demand and told her not to worry, she would learn to read when she got to kindergarten. As school board members, I'm guessing many of you have children of your own, and you are well aware that toddlers are not that easily deterred. If you tell them to wait a year for something, that might as well be an eternity, and they will probably bring it up every day thereafter. After some persistent nagging, I decided it was time to start doing my research. I got books about teaching reading, developing phonemic awareness, phonics, and more. I found the Sold a Story podcast and was alarmed and dismayed to learn more about how polarizing teaching reading can be, our nation's persistent lackluster results, and the fact that publishers with marketing budgets continue to have a larger impact on curriculum adaptation or adoption than major scientific studies and the data behind them. If you haven't listened to Sold a Story, it lays out how scientific studies have actually demonstrated adverse effects of popular reading instructional approaches and curricula, including 2 I was surprised to see touted in Bristol's school handbook: balanced literacy and reading recovery. Just one example, a massive randomized controlled study of reading recovery found that while it helped first graders make short-term gains in reading, by 3rd and 4th grade, those students were actually behind their peers that received no intervention at all. I have heard that some teachers are receiving training that aligns with the science of reading and data-backed approaches, but couldn't find any further information. This sounds promising, and I suspect this means the district has formed a plan to respond to the information that is now widely available about how kids learn to read. However, my searches keep bringing me to references to problematic approaches in curricula, balanced literacy, reading recovery, and Fountas and Pinnell leveled readers and assessments. I know that we all want the district to successfully teach students to read using proven curricula and evidence-based techniques. That change takes time, and there is certainly no blame to be assigned for previously using reading programs that were believed at the time to be the best ways to teach children to read. My question is, now that information on how to more effectively teach children to read is widely available, how is the school district responding? How can it share with parents, educators, and other stakeholders the plan to address this critical issue, the timeline, and what resources might be lacking and would delay changes? I'd like to encourage the school district to provide open communication on how it's moving forward to ensure that our kids learn to read and to let us know if there's anything we as a community can do to help. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Buck.
Are you all problem solving the audio issue on streaming? Are we problem solving the YouTube?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not on YouTube. Worst case scenario, we'll post it later.
Okay.
Just keep on going. It's recording.
Dave Buck, 124 South Elm. First of all, welcome back, and looking forward to the fiscal year 23-24 school year. I've had 3 graduates from the district. I have 2 grandkids at Bristol, and a 3rd grandkid will be starting Walter Ambrose in August, September. I'd like to talk about 2 really significant stories that happened in the news over the last couple of days, and they're related. The first one is the Rockaway, New Jersey School District awarded a $9.1 million settlement to a family whose 12-year-old daughter, or a 7th grader, was unmercifully bullied and committed suicide. That's story 1. Story 2 happened today. Presidential candidate, former President Donald Trump, was arraigned on federal charges for January 6th. What do these 2 stories have related, and what do they mean for this district? Jason, you may be very aware of this, but I believe that there is a national crisis of character going on today, and that represents a loss of our core values and our moral compass. I'm not making a judgment against Trump and his politics, but I will as a human being. I think he's proven himself dishonest, arrogant, and a bully. And it's amazing that we can't do better than him in this country as a presidential candidate. That's my political editorial. But the point is, he is a bully. And so many in our national politics are bullies. And you see it in the news every night. And stink rolls downhill. And it affects our parents and our adults. Even here in Webster Groves, if you go on Facebook, Community Connect, alternative community especially, and just hang out for a while, you will see the bullying that goes on by our parents to fellow parents and residents. John, you've been the victim of that bullying. Joe, you've been the victim of this bullying. The entire board and school district has been a victim of unmerciful bullying. And then it stink rolls downhill, and who does it go to? Our kids. Is it any wonder that we have a bullying problem across this nation with our children? It starts at the top, in my opinion, and rolls downhill. So I've experienced it firsthand, because bullying's been around since there have been schools. When my mental illness leaked out when I was in high school, I was bullied and called loony, psycho, crazy Davy, all that stuff. Joe, when Sawyer was in middle school, bullied being a fat boy. And for those of you that know Ashley, John, you remember Ashley. She graduated, I think, in 2010. Ashley beat to a different drummer, and she was bullied a lot just because she was different. This is a major reason, and Jason, I will never stop beating this drum, why character education is so important in our district. I think it's fundamental. This is the school, and I think education is part of the answer. And I think schools can play a major role in helping to educate our kids on the values of honesty, kindness, empathy, generosity, fairness, humility, et cetera, et cetera. I think we have an obligation to do that. And relative to bullying, yeah, I have not really spoken out too much about bullying, although 3 of my kids faced it. And John, I'm looking forward to sitting down with you Tuesday at 9:30. Thank you very much. Because I have some ideas, and they won't cost the district a penny. It's simply in actions that you can take to help connect us as a family, to connect us as a school community, and to reach fairness and to eliminate bullying in this place forever. So, thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Marin Melum.
Hello, I'm Marin Melum. I live at 320 South Maple Avenue. I'm here this evening in my capacity as Executive Director of the Webster Grove School District Foundation. As you likely know, we are leading the For the W capital campaign for enhancements at Moss Field. I wanted to give a little update. We went public with our campaign in May, right at the end of the school year, and since then it has been a whirlwind. I've had so many alumni and families come up to me and share wonderful stories about memories at Moss Field and their excitement for the new complex and a facility of which we can all be proud. So that's been really fun. And I'm thrilled to report that we've already raised more than $700,000 in that short period of time from more than 120 donors. So I just wanted to say thank you to our co-chairs, Eric Stisser and Coach Cliff Ice, who've been working tirelessly on this effort, to our entire steering committee, and to the community for sharing their stories and their love of this community and their excitement for the new complex. Finally, I would like to invite everybody to farewell to the field on August 16th 6 p.m. We'd invite the community to come out for this free event to enjoy the original Moss Field one last time before construction starts. We're going to have food trucks and snow cones. We can bring a picnic. Steve Ewing from the Urge will be playing. The band will be there. Many student athletes will be there showcasing their talents and having activities for kids. I think it's going to be really fun. Again, free event, August 16th, farewell to the field at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for all your hard work. All right. Our next item is recognition of Mr. Todd for achieving his advanced certification. And I think we did recognize him last spring. Unfortunately, he's not here, but it's always good to have board members getting the advanced training. So thank you to Alan for getting that done. And the next item is board calendar. Anything?
Yeah, no, it's the initial calendar of the year that has quite a few events. As always, that calendar can change based on board availability more than anything else, but that's where we'll start and we'll adjust from there. All those things should be on your board calendars on your Google site. That's it.
All right. And moving on to reports from superintendent and staff, and we will start with Ms. Frazier and Mr. Stuber on construction for Moss Field.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to share that we opened bids for the project on the 13th of July. Our architect team had contacted 18 contractors, sent bid docs to 4 plan rooms. 9 contractors had expressed an interest in the project, and then the district ended up receiving 4 bids. They ranged from a low bid of $16,718,100 to $21,019,000, and that does not include the alternates. Wright Construction was the low bid on the project. They confirmed in an interview that they reviewed their bid and they were comfortable with the bid amount and the project timeline. Representatives from the design team, our administrators in the district, and 2 members of the Building Advisory Committee were a part of that interview with Wright Construction. The project did come in over budget, over our $12.9 million that was set aside for the budget. So we had $12.3 million of Prop S funds set aside for the field itself and $600,000 for the parking lot. The foundation, as Marin just mentioned, is working on a capital campaign to help with some of those costs. Their goal is $2 million, and as she said, they're well over 1/3 of the way right now to that $2 million. So our recommendation is to approve the bid from Wright Construction, and I want to talk about what our recommendation is, and then I also want to talk about how we're going to fund that. So the recommendation has the base bid from Wright Construction, plus alternate number 2, which is the Champions Plaza and the canopy. So that would be up in this area here. That is the brick columns and the canopy for both sides of that. And then alternate number 3 would be the video scoreboard. Alternate 4C is Greenfield's artificial turf. We have to pick one of those turf bids. We had them split out just so we could see the different cost in the different types of turf. And then alternate number 6, which is the concrete bleachers over here in this section. So those are all included in our recommendation for a total of $17,954,100. I did want to let the board know too that there is a $750,000 allowance for contingency funds included in there. Those contingency funds are used for unforeseen circumstances that may arise as a project gets underway. Those funds cannot be spent without approval of the district. If they're not spent, then we will get a credit back for whatever is not spent. So just to talk about the budget a little bit. So we have 12.9 in Prop S set aside, and we also have a contingency. Now we have $4.2 million. That was funds from premium on the bonds that we sold. If you recall, we sold the bonds and also received a premium of about $1.1 million on the last one, and we're expecting even more, over $2 million on the next series of bonds that we issue. Along with that and interest that we're earning off of our little steam bonds, but most of this contingency is from the projected interest for the next issuance of bonds. So of that $4.2 million in contingency, we purposefully set that money aside for unforeseen circumstances. If something comes up and we needed those funds, we didn't earmark those for any project, so they could be used to go towards this project, towards Moss Field. And then we have the funds for the W capital campaign that the foundation is doing of $1.9 million. That would come to our total of our $17,954,100. And I did just want to talk a little bit too, if something would happen and the capital campaign did not raise the total, but I will tell you I'm pretty confident they've already raised $700,000 in a very short time. But if they would not, we can use the rest of those contingency funds. I said we have up to $4.2 million. Then if the foundation only raised $600,000 to $700,000 and we needed another $250,000 over what's in the contingency fund, we could use $250,000 out of our district reserves. And just to give you an idea, if we would use that $250,000, that's a reduction in our fund balance of less than 0.5%. And just to point out too, as you know, we use different funds. We're on governmental fund accounting, so we have a general fund, a teacher's fund, and a capital projects fund. All of these funds are placed into the capital projects fund. So when we issue the bonds, the proceeds from the bonds, the premium, and the interest that we earn all go into the capital projects fund. And we can only spend those items on things that were on the ballot. So the ballot had all of our projects listed. We can't use, for instance, we cannot use bond issue funds for things like salary and benefits, just to clarify. And our fund balance this past year, when we started the year, we started at about 55%. The projection was that our fund balance was going to lower, but as the year went on, our fund balance ended up increasing, and that's twofold. Number one, revenue came in a little bit higher than what was originally budgeted, came in about 4% over budget. And then the other reason for that is on the expenditure side. We have very good budget managers in the district. They really take care of their budget. They don't spend it on things that aren't needed. So then we had some savings there too on the expenditure side. So we ended the year with a fund balance of about 60%. We expect that to happen again this year. Right now we see no reason that will not happen. So feel really comfortable saying that we could, if needed, if the capital campaign didn't raise the total goal of $2 million, that we would be able to use $250,000 out of our reserves. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I have a team here to help me too. And I don't know, Dr. Simpson, if you wanted to say anything else about the project or the capital campaign.
Can you just go through where the contingency fund is?
Sure.
Where that came from? I'm
Yep.
confused.
That is money from the premium on the bonds
Okay,
and interest from bonds.
okay.
So we did not mark that for any project. So it's separate than the $45 million. It was on top of the $45 million, and it was set aside for unforeseen circumstances.
And you said that's 4.2, so this would only use 3.1 of it, assuming the capital campaign raised all their money?
Correct.
Am I following that? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
I guess what I'd say, I was a little concerned when I saw the initial bids, especially knowing that the district is headed, the future of our fiscal future doesn't look as bright as maybe we would like. But given that this bond, Prop S, passed resoundingly, and I think one of the big reasons was the community was really excited about Moss Field. I know that the grass versus turf thing is something that will probably be a debate that is we're just not going to make everybody happy, but I think after thinking through it a little bit more and looking at the plan that you've laid out, and knowing that you and John and your team are going to work this year on trying to figure out the future of the district and how we can make sure that we're set up right from a fiscal standpoint in the future, I feel really good about this plan, and I'm comfortable with moving forward with it.
Tira?
I have another question about the contingency fund. Is that expected to increase with future bond sales, or will that, will it stay 4 point whatever million?
Yeah, depending on exactly what the premium is on the next bonds that we issue, it could go up another 300 to 500,000.
Okay. And then I have another question, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if our original estimate was 2.9 million, I think, and obviously the bids came in quite a bit higher than that. Can you talk a little bit about that disparity and kind of what caused such a difference?
Yeah, sure. One of the major things has to do with MSD, and I will let Mr. Stuber explain that.
I can pick on like 3 or 4 items here. As Pam mentioned, that the parking lot was actually in the original planning, but once we got deeply into the civil engineering part of the design phase, a lot of the requirements are based on MSD requirements. And for example, we'll say the parking lot was $600,000. Well, lay on the new MSD requirements, and by when I say requirements, there's a massive underground water quality structure that is literally under the whole footprint of that parking lot now. And that was one of the biggest surprises through design development. That parking lot probably that water quality feature probably added another $900,000 to just that parking lot cost alone. Then there was also some surprises through civil design for the field drainage also. I think that our drainage system for MSD requirements is up near the $2 million mark, which was another big chunk of money that was really not realized until we really got into the nuts and bolts of the design phase. So those are 2 really big examples. There was also another impact which is worth mentioning. Through all this design work with MSD, it was very, very time consuming. It actually pushed our design schedule out at least 2 to 3 months, which forces the start of construction later into the year. And we were forced to require from the contractors to include things like winterization and premium time, which I don't have any exact numbers on, but that's included in their number also, which that could be percentages of their base bid. So, you know, everything up to that point was a pretty big impact, and it was a surprise. Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments?
I have some more questions. I
Go
was
for
just
it. Keep
gonna
going.
Giving other
No,
people
keep
an
going.
opportunity to talk. Sorry. As far as the turf options go, can anyone speak to why the decision was made for that particular option that's in the recommendation?
Want me to start? Or? Couple of things. One, we've seen that field. We've seen that turf on fields. We went, we looked at it, we walked on it. We also looked at the GMAX rating of the field. In some of our research, we found that the recommendation is to have your GMAX rating, which is a safety rating, and you don't want that to be above 165 on a type of field like this. But the estimated range is 90 to 115, and this was in that range, but the lowest of those turfs up there and still in that range.
And I noticed that the option that it's in the recommendation does not include a pad. Is that anything that we need to be concerned about in terms of student safety?
No, not at all.
Can I read this? This is this actually addresses that specific issue.
Sure.
There are some situations where a shock pad is recommended when installing lightweight infill systems common with alternative natural infills like cork, coconut, or I guess olive, like an olive fiber. There isn't enough material in the system to provide necessary shock absorption. To meet the needed industry safety requirements, a shock pad is added under the system to provide the adequate performance. So it is a performance issue.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think that's it.
Are you sure? You can ask them.
But by the way, we're using a rubber and sand combination and not an organic material
Okay.
for the infill.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I just want to again add just a huge thanks to Rob and Pam and their teams and Honer and Clayton Engineering. I mean, it's an amazing, monstrous, complex task. And they all worked very hard for over a year to get us to the point, to get us to a field that we can, with our current funding, with the support from the community, we can fund. It's going to be worthy of our children, of our student athletes, of our community who are going to walk around it, and all the outside people who help with the project. You do wonderful work, and we're glad to work with you here in the school district. So, and also I wanted to again give props to Marin, who has worked tirelessly. Eric Stisser, I don't know how this isn't his full-time job, all the work that he does, the campaign committee, again, to raise $700,000 in 3 months is pretty remarkable, and we do have a lot of confidence that they'll see that $2 million. They're pretty determined to see that $2 million. So it's been a good community all-around wide effort, so I'm excited.
So I guess, Pam, in summary, you feel like it's a good move for the district and we're financially in a place that we can take this on?
Absolutely, absolutely. I feel very confident with the plan that I've laid out. We still have more contingency funds that we're not using, and there's a chance those contingency funds will grow.
Well, as someone who's had kids play on Moss Field and then go to MICDS or Kirkwood or any other districts around us, and to Dave's point, get bullied because our field is so embarrassing relatively. So I think it's really exciting for the district and for our students to have something comparable to what they deserve and what's around us.
Can I also add that parking lot in and of itself looks amazing compared to the current state of that parking lot?
I always joke that people are probably more excited about the parking lot than they are the field. Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And at the August 16th event, people can maybe just pick up a little chunk by hand, not using a tool of that parking lot. Our players are still going to practice on it maybe a week or two, I think. But yeah, that'll be a great event. So hopefully community members can come out and celebrate, have fun.
Absolutely. So do I have a motion?
Sure, I'll motion to approve Wright Construction as the general contractor for the Moss Field project in the amount of $17,954,100.
Second.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Well, that is very exciting. And moving on to the construction bid for Coughlin Field.
Yeah, so in Coughlin Field, we opened those bids on July 25th. Also, our design consultants had contracted 18 contractors, sent it to the design to 4 plan rooms. 8 contractors had expressed an interest in the project, and we received 3 bids. The bids range from $1,796,000 to $2,525,000. Again, that doesn't include the alternates. The low bidder is Vernon Jones. We also interviewed them. They confirmed in their interview that they reviewed their bid. They were comfortable with their bid amount, and they're comfortable with the project timeline. So the recommendation is to approve Vernon Jones as a general contractor for the project in the amount of $2,371,000. That includes the base bid plus the artificial turf. That's the Ultra Blade artificial turf. That bid also has a contingency allowance. It's for $500,000. Once again, if that's not used, it'll come back to the district, and they have to get district approval before they can use those funds. If the project, if they do use all of that $500,000, This project will need $271,000 from that contingency fund. So that again is about less than 0.5% of our fund balance if that is needed. If something were to happen and all of the contingency is used by Moss Field, I feel very comfortable using again our fund balance, $250,000 to $270,000 for this project if that were to happen. So any questions on this project? It's a little bit less complex than the Moss Field project, but very important. There's a lot of work going to be done to that field, so we're pretty excited about that one as well. And we're excited about the playability for all of the athletes and just students during the day that could go out on that field.
And I want to stress very much the intentionality, since from the very beginning of doing whatever we could to make it be a baseball, softball field, not to be our girl team, our softball team playing on a boys' baseball field. So the coaches have been involved, students have contributed to the ideas, and feel good about the design and how that's gonna be for the student athletes.
Any questions? All right, do we have a motion?
Sure, I can motion to approve Vernon Jones as the general contractor for the Coughlin Field project in the amount of $2,371,000.
Second?
Second, go ahead.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Maybe we'll keep going with Ms. Frazier with some really good, exciting news. Exactly.
Yeah, this next one is
Bus
really
transportation,
exciting. Yeah, we're excited to recommend an option to increase free transportation to students in the district. We'd like to recommend that elementary students who are 1.5 miles or more, and then secondary students who are 2 miles or more from their school would receive free transportation. And we're able to do that because the state increased funding for transportation. They have a formula, and it is now considered full funded. That is 75% of your allowable costs. They never pay 100%, but they were paying 20 to 30% of allowable costs. Some years it was as low as 17% of your cost, but with it being 75%, we really feel like this is what we need to do for our families. That's something when families enroll in Webster Groves we hear about. They're not used to not having a little more transportation than what we provide, because most districts do provide more transportation. So we're excited to offer that. We're thinking we're going to need up to 4 buses. First Student has said they could provide those 4 buses and the drivers for those buses. If something were to happen and we'd have more students sign up, we would have a wait list, because right now we don't have the availability to get more than 4 buses. And when I'm estimating those costs, and if you remember when we opened the bids for First Student, they had increased their costs. So when I estimate our costs for this year, with their increase in costs and then the increase in the number of buses, it looks like we're going to have an increased cost of about $470,000 this year, and we won't see that reimbursement until next year because it's a reimbursement program. At the end of the year, we have to submit how many students rode the bus, how many miles our buses drive, and we have to separate miles if they're route miles or if they're trip miles, and then our funding is based on that, and they send us to us in the next fiscal year. So my estimates, I think, should be close. They could be off a little bit, though, because I don't know exactly how many students are going to ride. I don't know exactly how many miles those buses are going to have to drive. But we should be in pretty good shape, or we'll be getting more funding from the state than we would be if the parents were paying to ride the bus. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I don't have a question, but it's interesting. Just one thing that I remember, former board member Arnold Stricker was always pretty adamant about increasing attendance, because attendance typically has a lot to do with student performance. And so I think one way that we can do that, that's why is doing things like this. That's why I think it's so exciting. I just think it's an equitable thing to do. It helps ensure that we get more kids in school every day, and I think it's awesome.
Tara?
I'm really excited about this. I think it's going to be wonderful for so many families in our district. I know it's probably not in the cards for this year, but are there any thoughts about providing an activity bus or activity buses, particularly at Hickson, where they have after-school clubs? And I know from my own personal experience with my children, those clubs have meant so much as far as building relationships with teachers and other students and just feeling like you're a part of the school community. So I was just curious if you had considered or thought about that.
That is a great point to bring up. We have not thought about that, but we will definitely look into that and see if it's something that can be done. Sometimes the after-school activities get a little bit tricky, especially since COVID with the number of drivers. I know the high school this past year had some issues getting enough drivers to get the students to their games. So that could be a challenge. We even looked at, on the high school side, could we look at another option? Maybe we could get a van, like a 15-passenger van, looked at the licensing that the person would need to drive that van, but when checking with DESI's, they said that's not allowable. You can't, anything that holds more than 10 passengers has to be a yellow school bus, or it cannot transport students. So those some of the challenges we've been facing, but we've been looking at ways to kind of overcome those obstacles, but we'll definitely look at that.
Great. Thank you.
So if we cannot paint it yellow and write bus on it, we're just thinking outside the box.
I like your creative thinking. I wonder, John, if you can talk about the process by which parents can sign up. And I understand there might be a wait list. So just, there's some clarity there.
So yeah, and Pam could probably talk a little bit better, but essentially we had researched all the different families that were enrolled in our district that lived at outside those radiuses, and contacted them personally. And so that they completed a form. Families that had already signed up that were outside didn't have to redo the form. Right now, it's looking pretty good that we'll be able to transport all the interested families. So, yeah, and again, kudos to Bev and Jason Miller, who are the ones that are behind the scenes working with First Student, Pam's leadership with them too. But it's a lot to try and pull together in 3 weeks, but getting it done, it's going to be great for children and families. So, excited.
Keita.
To kind of piggyback on Christine's question, are the routes, how soon will parents be able to see the routes and be provided with that kind of information?
Yeah, the routes won't be available until a couple days before school starts, because they will have to be redone, so they can get the most efficient routes to bring our students to school. So we're hoping and asking all of our families just to be patient with us and knowing they're coming, but they're not going to see those routes and their bus pickup times, their bus stops as early as they normally would.
Okay. My other question is, since Moss won't be available, are we providing transportation for like the football team? Are they practicing at Kirkwood and stuff like that?
I don't know exactly how that's going to look.
Okay.
So they'll...
Just the other team, like the teams that would normally practice at Moss.
I think most of the time they're still practicing at Moss, aren't they? I should know
They
that.
are?
I think they're planning on using that practice.
That upper
field.
field.
Oh, the upper
practice
field,
field,
okay.
Yeah. Where the field goal kicker is going to go, I have no idea. So yeah, I need to better understand that.
Okay.
Yeah. I know we reached out to the city to see about using the field across the street, across Ambrose Way.
I just have one final question. Will there still be an option for families to pay that are closer than 2 miles or a mile and a half?
For the
Bus service?
For the secondary students, yes.
Okay.
Yes, if you meet that criteria that we had before, where you were if you were 2.5 miles and free lunch, it's free. Otherwise, you could pay the $400 per year.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve providing additional transportation to students as described.
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
And we have the 4.04 for Christine's, that personnel report number 2. This one.
Yeah, sure, I can motion to approve, so it's now 4.04?
It's 4.04.
I can motion to approve agenda item 4.04, which is personnel report number 2.
That's right. That's perfect.
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
All right. And moving on to the consent agenda.
That's me. All right. I will motion to approve consent agenda items 5.02, 5.03, 5.04, 5.05, 5.06, 5.07, 5.08, 5.09, 5.10, 5.12, 5.13, 5.14, 5.15, 5.16, 5.17, 5.18, 5.19, 5.20.
Second.
All those in favor, aye. Anyone opposed? All right. And with that, I will entertain a motion to move into executive session for the purpose of discussing legal matters.
So moved.
Second.
And that will be a roll call vote.
Ms. Shear?
Yes.
Ms. Quinn? Yes. Ms. Dahl?
Yes.
Ms. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Khan?
Yes.
All right. We will take a 2-minute break.